the number one thing is if you can get your users talking about your product and recommending it to other people, either through testimonials or case studies, or if they're in groups, that is the biggest thing is can you really get that throughput of customers or users raving about what you're doing? That would be the best marketing for sure.
G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Tessa Thomas from Pipeline Solutions based in Toronto, Canada. Thanks for your time today, Tessa.
Thanks, Troy. Happy to be here.
Let's start with how we know each other. Hitashi, your head of marketing, reached out. Thought you'd be a great guest for us.
Yeah, it's great. She had, listened to some of the podcasts and, thought it'd be a good fit and a good chat for us. So excited to be here.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So Pipeline Solutions, we're an all-in-one platform for boutique fitness studio owners and operators. So automate workflow, streamline member communication, connect your team, and really do deep analytics to unlock actionable insights all in one unified platform. So we integrate with some of the larger, the leading booking management platforms, MindBody, Mariana Tech soon later this year, that typically studios use as their back-end booking management platform. So we integrate directly, pull out all the key metrics, insights, and then also unify that with operational automations, workflow, tasks, and things like that.
Oh, great. And specific industries you focus on or geographic areas?
So fitness, so boutique fitness, so even, not just broadly fitness, but a segment of it, which would be your F45s, Orange Theories, yoga, Pilates, HIIT, any class-based boutique really is our core audience. We're global, so operate in many countries around the world, primarily the US, Canada, and Australia, but also some in the UK and a few kind of sprinkled throughout there. Also New Zealand, actually. We have quite a few studios in New Zealand.
And how did you start out?
Yeah, always a bit of a circuitous path, the start out question. So I have a background in athletics, Canadian, but went to school in the States on a softball scholarship. So spent 4 years down there. And after that time, decided to kind of retire from the softball world. There's a pro league now, but that wasn't quite available when I was going through college. It was just starting and didn't really feel like quite the right option for me. And there was definitely some burnout at that point as well. So, kind of pivoted into my more formal career, you could call it, in art conservation. So I have a lot of experience working in museums and galleries, libraries and archives, things like that. But I knew that fitness and athletics was always going to be a part of my life. It's just what I've been doing for so long, just as a kid, all the way up through playing for the national team program at a certain point and college athletics, university athletics. So got my personal training certification. Group fitness was something I did part-time, always, even when I was doing conservation work. And it led me to F45, which was a great fit because the first time I walked in there, I thought, I haven't felt this way about training since I had been a student athlete in the States and kind of that team training environment. So I loved it. Started out coaching and didn't take too long. I'd previous to that gone into a little bit of app development myself, just had a personal interest, self-taught, no code and low code platforms, and had some kind of small ventures down that path, just building for iPhone and things like that. So that combined with being in studio and working with the studio owners, so Liz and John Ledbrook, and John's my co-founder in Pipeline, really opened my eyes to just how much work went into this business, went into running the studio and, growing it and making sure everybody was taken care of, both on the member side and the team side. And I could see, the studio was doing really well. This was, pre-COVID, and in Canada, the brand didn't have a ton of awareness at that time. So there was just a lot of, inbound into the studios growing quite a bit, and actually became a tricky period. It's hard to to handle high growth, and the systems kind of start to break down. And so that's where we started. Was I approached John and said, what can we maybe build together? What kind of sucks about what's happening right now? And that's kind of the birth of a pipeline. So everything, as I say, has been built from the inside out. It's been built from our experiences in studio, and now 6-7 years later with pipeline, we've seen just so much data and spoken to so many owners over the years that it's really informed everything that we built. It's directly from the influence of what's going to be the most helpful, because I so value those spaces and what they do for people, just mentally, physically, the confidence, and supporting that through technology is really, something that I'm very passionate about. So that's where we got started.
And F45, that was founded by a couple of Australians, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it was. Yeah. And I think about 2012 or 2013, somewhere around there.
And I think Mark Wahlberg invested before it was listed on one of the exchanges in the US.
Yeah, I believe so. He came through our studio actually a couple of years back. So John got to meet him. It was, I think, the 1 week in 4 years I wasn't in Toronto.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the 1 week I after COVID and everything, I decided to go on a trip with my mom to Portugal, and that's when Mark Wahlberg showed up.
Oh, no.
Didn't get a chance to meet him in person, but a lot of our coaches and team did.
I've got a sliding doors moment as well, kind of. So back when I was younger, when I had hair, I was in a couple of bands, and when I started managing as CEO of the first CEO of a family distillery here, pretty much Australia's premier craft distillery here in Tasmania. Started the industry really in the 90s. Anyway, I started there at the end of 2013, and 6 months before I'd started, our cellar door manager was telling us that this guy was walking around with his family, young kids, etc., and he got the call, said, you got to get down here. So Rob went down, and it was Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin just walking around.
Oh, wow.
Distillery, our cellar door in Hobart, sleepy Hobart here. Yeah, I missed it by 6 months.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's funny how those things happen.
And so what year did you start the business, and how old were you?
So we started in 2019, 32.
32. And do you have any key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over those 6 years?
For sure. I mean, when we first started, it's kind of a funny story. So fall 2019, started building out just for our location. So the goal was to build a dashboard that John would be able to see key metrics about the studio performance in a single view that didn't require pulling, 10 to 12 reports at the end of each month, and also kind of a more real-time view of things. So we started building that in the fall 2019, went live for our studio January 2020. We were testing it out, was working really great. He loved it. Started speaking with other owners in and around Toronto, and essentially got 2 more interested. This is pretty much beta. So I'm going back a little bit, but, kind of getting some early users on. And they were super excited to get started. And that was March 11th, 2020. And then 2 days later, the whole world shut down. So we had quite a few stops and starts over the next 2 years with that. And realistically, after March 13th, 2020, not much happened for about 6 months. Everything here in Toronto, we had, quite extensive lockdowns. So really everything closed. We kind of shelved it. But what really became valuable, we had built some automations, not just the dashboard, but one of our automations was the booking management automation, which is a double booking removal. So the reason we built it is because the studio was in such a high growth stage that we were having trouble with people multi-booking classes with no intention to train 2 or 3 times on a Saturday. They just hadn't decided how late they were going to stay out Friday night. Yeah. And so the booking management automation would look ahead to the next day and remove those extra bookings. So it just put that person in one class and took them out. And so it was a high growth problem, but what ended up happening was it became very valuable during COVID with limited capacity, because all of a sudden now, when studios did reopen in the fall of 2020, they only had 8 spots, or, because of the physical distancing. So it became really critical that, those 8 spots weren't double booked or anything like that they were, really premium. So we had studios that we onboarded just onto the automations and, kind of revisit the dashboard and things like that, and also started working with a few more studios in the States and in regions that were, kind of still open. So really in that first year, in all honesty, it was mostly just survival and trying to figure out how we could help. There was a lot of just listening and talking and understanding what people were going through and if we could build or adapt for them. So probably the goal at the end of 2020 was just to have, uh, a business that was generating any revenue that year.
Yep.
And that meant that the studios were open, which was great. So, I think we only had maybe a couple dozen locations by that point, but I would say, the turning point or where we started to experience most of our growth would have been from, summer 2022 until now. So if we kind of don't remove those COVID years, but they were just very up and down. So in the last 3 years, we've experienced quite a bit of growth. So almost like 300%, 2022 to 2023, and then another 150% in the last year or so. So quite a bit of growth, year over year since we got started.
Yeah, that's phenomenal growth. Well done.
Thank
What
you.
about number of full-time equivalent team members you started with and where you're at now?
Yeah, so we started with just John and I, and now we're up to about 6 team members that are, fully into pipeline, working in the business every day and contributing daily. So we've seen, quite a bit of growth. We've been at that size for about a year. So we brought in 2 team members towards the fall of last year, and it's been really great. So, there's of course, for any small business owner, when there's just 2 or 3 of you, and I should say, our third partner is our CTO, who we brought in about 3 years ago now. So it was John and I really, just for those first couple years, wearing way too many hats. I had developed the very first version of what we built because of my kind of background in tinkering with software, and it quickly became very clear that we needed to bring on somebody much, much more technical to take the platform where we wanted to go. So we brought Mike in, I believe in 2022, January, and we've just kind of grown the team covering different parts of the business
Mm.
since then.
No, that's very smart to have a technical co-founder in the business on the cap table. If you're a tech company, that makes sense. Well, a lot of people try to
Yeah.
do it without and just ends in tears.
100%. I think where it benefited us, not necessarily having him there from the beginning, but when he did come in, first of all, he had worked with us. So there was a certain point in time where I had realized there was a limitation in my capabilities. And so we had contracted out some work. So there was already a relationship there, which was really great. And then, the benefit of having something to build off of, I think is helpful. So it's good to have kind of some starting points. But at the same time, looking back, there's parts of me that think, well, what if Mike had been in this business 2 years before?
Mm.
Where would the platform be? Now where things be, but you can't really, kind of go back in time. So, but it's been
Jump
great.
in the DeLorean. But I mean,
Exactly.
you put together that MVP, minimal viable product. You guys were testing, talking a lot to your clients, and so it probably wouldn't have maybe lost too much that Mike didn't join until a couple of years in.
No, for sure. And as I mentioned, of course, there were just a couple of years in there that were so up and down in the industry in general that
Yeah.
it's easy to assume that there would have been maybe some progress, but it could have easily stalled, kind of one month to the next when things were open and closed and kind of back and forth during that time. So I think it worked out.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Well, we're kind of masochists, right? We just keep going. And
We are.
I don't think it ever feels that way, really, in some regard. It's funny because my mom mentioned earlier this year, she said, "Do you remember when the goal was 50 studios?" And I thought, yeah, I do, because it still feels like that in some way. It still feels like we're always, just trying to make the platform and product that people love, that people want to use, that is super beneficial and helpful to them. And in that way, I think it always feels like there's more work to be done, because there is. But yeah, succeeded. We launched a big partnership with F45 HQ last September. So that was a big deal for us to become a formal partner with headquarters, and considering the starting out as a coach to co-founding the platform to then
Mm.
working with HQ is a pretty
Yeah.
unique journey. So that's definitely been a highlight for our whole team. But of course, and for John as well, starting out as an owner, franchisee, and now a partner with HQ is really cool. So that's definitely been a highlight. But I would definitely refrain from succeeding being a destination that we've achieved, and more so always a work in progress.
What does success look like to you?
Honestly, to me, it's so one of the metrics we track more closely than anything is churn. And success to me is that number being as close to zero as possible. That's what really matters to me, which is it means that the owners and operators that we're working with are getting value out of what we've built. And if that is happening, the trickle effect is that their members are staying longer, and don't want to make too many assumptions, but getting healthier and
Mm.
of course, benefiting from being in those spaces. So that to us is the big ripple of what we do. If we know that studio owners and operators are getting the most out of our platform and they're sticking around and it's making their operations more efficient so they can spend more time with their members, it's a great cycle. It means that those coaches, owners, and operators are able to pour into those people and they get to lead healthier lives. So that's success for us is, keeping churn as low as possible because it means that the ripple is kind of working.
Have you listened to Nathan Latke's podcast?
I have in and out, not recently, but definitely some episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, he really just honed in on just interviewing and talking about SaaS businesses. So he's very good at pulling out their key numbers, as you probably would have heard, especially churn, ARR, stuff like that, annual recurring revenue. So yeah, that's a good resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
The number one thing is if you can get your users talking about your product and recommending it to other people, either through testimonials or case studies, or if they're in groups. That is the biggest thing is, can you really get that throughput of customers or users raving about what you're doing? That would be the best marketing for sure.
Have you read Jeffrey Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm?
I have, but a while ago. It's one of the ones on my list to reread for
Yeah, I
sure.
think
Yeah.
it's mainly for the tech industry, but it's a really good book. Yeah, written in the 90s.
Absolutely.
And how did you fund the business?
So pretty well bootstrapped. We did get an investment from, at the time, was Earnest Capital, now the Calm Company Fund. So a founder earnings agreement, so non-equity investment, but a small check that, of course, helped, especially in those first couple of years with all the stops and starts and things like that. But other than that, we're fully bootstrap business, and our customers are our investors in that, that revenue drives the growth of the business.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Interestingly, I mean, fitness and wellness is booming. It's very high growth industry right now. The consumer is more educated and connected than ever between wearables and boutique, and if you want to loop in GLP-1s into that, it's really a behemoth. So yeah, I would. I mean, from a business perspective, I think it would be a good business decision. But also, I think what, of course, draws people to fitness and wellness in general is just the idea of being involved in an industry and a business that is, for the betterment of everyone. I want everybody to be participating in fitness and wellness and contributing to their health and the health of their communities anywhere. So in that sense, I think it's a great industry from a business perspective, but then also, if there's something you're looking to make an impact in and make a difference, then I think it has that draw as well.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so audience can learn from it?
Oh boy. What day is it today? Tuesday? Maybe yesterday. Yeah, it doesn't, there is a saying that it doesn't get easier, you just get better, right? So that's exactly it. I think there's there's always stressors. They come in different forms. Could be partnership, could be team. Fortunately for us, to be honest, we haven't had, knock on wood, those team stressors. We've put together a great team, and we communicate really well together, and so I'm actually really grateful that that hasn't been a stressor for us. But there's always things coming up, and of course, if I look back, like I said, we were pretty well ready to launch, and then the whole world shut down,
Yeah.
and that was, tremendous. And the part I left out about that is I had actually left a stable job to go kind of all in on pipeline for 6 to 9 months and see where it would go. So, kind of took a little leap of faith there, and the world said, not quite yet, Tess.
Mhm.
You gotta wait a little bit. So,
Mm.
there's been several over the last few years, moments where we had a partner. Before Mike came into the business, we had a technology partner that, long story short, was kind of spearheading a part of our tech stack. We had a partnership with them, and they kind of pulled the plug on that with about 19 or 20 days notice, which effectively, at that point in time, would have shut down the product for our users. So that was super stressful, and scrambling to kind of get that sorted and make sure nobody even noticed or that anything skipped a beat. I think, the stress for us comes in the form of making sure that we're delivering for the people that we're serving, and the majority of our users and customers are small business owners themselves, right? They're
Mm.
studio owners and operators. Some of them are, of course, are, multi-location, or they might be in owner groups, or of course we have some mid-market enterprise kind of customers, but the majority of people in this space are small business owners. They might be franchisees, and really, to be honest, if I'm being honest, the idea of letting them down at all is the stressor for
Yeah.
me. So, I know that it matters a lot that their business runs every day the way that they expect it to. And if we're a core part of that infrastructure, then, we need to make sure that we're up and that uptime is there and we're operating and we're not causing any issues. We're not adding to the idea is to create more time for them, not to create more headaches for them. So anytime that that is a thing, whether, there's potentially the server going down or a service going down, anything like that, of course, is always going to be a stressor for us. But I think how you work through it is just always trying to do the next right thing, which is all you ever can do, is acknowledge the issue, communicate that you're trying to work through it, and just do that as best you can. And that's been core to what we've done when those things come up. It's not necessarily easy, but it's the thing that you have to do. And I think as an entrepreneur, that's just what comes with it. You just have to get a bit better at doing that, every day, and hope that, you get to, keep fighting
Mm.
for the next day, essentially.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Myself, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that the business will never outgrow the founder. We are the ceilings on what we build. And so it's funny, but, that really starts to hit home when you start to see the difference in your mindset and how you think about things impacting every part of the business. And so, I say myself, but, just generally our team, investing in our team and investing in professional development and growth, across our team is critical. And to me, that's been the biggest impact, because there's no way the business grows if we don't grow.
Yeah.
Every year, you kind of need to replace yourself, right? And, the only way to do that is if it makes sense for you to kind of get to that next level.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
There's just some days where there's just a lot of time. There's not a lot of time to do other things, and the days are, can be a little bit long sometimes. But, I find those days are a little bit fewer and further between, and it kind of comes with the territory. So, you kind of get the best of or double-edged sword, right? A little bit more freedom, but on those days where you got to bear down and it's you to answer those support tickets or take those meetings, and that's where it stops, and you kind of got to commit to that. So there's some long days in there, and when those show up, they're not always the most fun, but for the most part, most days are good, which is great.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
I love the impact that we have with our customers. That's the biggest thing for me. That's what I love to see. I love, getting on a call and someone saying, like, just seeing their eyes light up. We're just saying like, oh my gosh, this is going to save me so much time. Seeing the impact of what we built and how it helps people is by far the best thing. And it's not a surprise because I was a coach and instructor for so long, and that's typically what draws you to personal training or group fitness, is seeing people succeed and being a part of that and helping them get there. So in many ways, it's the exact same thing that I look for in SaaS. Is we're even B2B SaaS, we're all just working with people. So it's easy to lose sight of that behind brands and businesses and all of those types of things. But when you can connect with somebody, show them something that you've literally built for them, that we've built for them, and see them get excited about that, and then also see it impact their business so that they can reach their goals. That's by far the best part.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Mindset shift. I think it comes down to what's helped us grow, and kind of what I was saying, which is that there's investing in ourselves, investing in growing personally is one of the biggest levers to growing the business. It's a huge mindset shift because it feels like you're separating out yourself from the business, but really everything's just one thing,
Mm.
and so it matters how you view yourself and what limiting beliefs you have personally. Like that could be impacting your business, things like that. So that's definitely been for me the biggest mindset shift. Maybe John would have a different answer, but I think that's been the thing, because I think I have a bias towards optimism. I don't think I would be doing this if I didn't. But even with that being said, there's just kind of things that you take for granted that have come with how you grew up, the environments you've been in, other things you've been exposed to, and things like that are factors. And if you're not kind of introspective, you don't realize how those things might be impacting your business. And one example would be, maybe someone tells themselves, well, I'm not good at sales, so I won't do sales. I'll outsource the sales for the business. And is that the truth, or is that just something that you're telling yourself, and is there room to grow in there? Like, is that something you're willing to work on? Because likely you're going to do a better job of selling than anybody if you've built the product, or, you've been a part of the co-founding team, and you can speak to it in a way that someone who's just coming in and learning about it for the first time really can't, necessarily speak to that. So those are the types of things that I found are important to lean into and understand where those narratives are coming from, and if we can kind of overcome those. And that's the part of, the self growth, I think, that as an example, can really impact your business.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Well, bias towards keeping track of those numbers. It's what we do. But it matters because you need to understand at any given point in time where the risks are to your business and where the opportunities are. And getting into a habit of communicating those, I think, is really critical. So it's not just, I'll open up my dashboard or spreadsheet once a month. It's, can I get into a habit of weekly check-ins on some of these numbers to get on top of them? get into the habit of communicating them with the team in a way that's relevant to them, in a way that is encouraging, that is able to provide transparency to what's going on so that, everybody's kind of pulling in the same direction and understanding what metrics we're trying to change or, shrink or grow or those types of things. So I think getting into the habit of diving into the numbers and using them to fuel your growth in your business and fuel your team is one of the best habits I think you can have.
Totally agree. You're preaching to the converted here. I think small business owners really need to know their numbers, and that's in our strategy program. We've got a 4-week strategy program, and that's where we start, is with a 10-year financial model to really, make the owners think about what's important, where's the growth going to come from, and the profit, and also what
Yeah.
cash or funding needs may come from that. But because if you don't, you just got to know those numbers. It's just so critical. I've seen a couple of businesses lately just realize that they've got a bit of a faulty business model until they sat down to
Right.
do the numbers, which they've now fixed and, going great. But yeah, I'm just in awe at
Yeah.
how business owners look at their numbers.
Absolutely. And I think the thing about it and why that happens is because it can be scary. Like,
Yep.
that's the worst case scenario. You look into the numbers and now you have a business model that's broken
Mm.
and everything's kind of been built on quicksand. And now we're talking about a stressor
Yeah.
and trying to figure out how the heck are we going to fix this, And I think the avoidance literally of that scenario is what keeps people away from it, which is, of course, counterintuitive because we all know you have to, if that's the truth, it's going to happen at some point. And unless we fix it, literally it's going to happen at some point. So we might as well
Mm.
face it head on. But absolutely.
Want specific advice to help you get your business through its #1 growth challenge? Book a free 20-minute growth chat with me, Troy, the founder of Grow a Small Business. I'll recommend some resources which will help you grow your business with ease so you can live the lifestyle you've signed up for. Go to growasmallbusiness.com and click on Growth Chat.
Can you talk how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I think, there's a saying, I have no idea where I can attribute it to, but it was, don't work with people until you work with people, which is, I think the idea is if we can bring somebody in for a project or a contract or work with them in some capacity, then it's a great indicator of what it's like to work with that person long term. And so for the most part, that's what we've done is we've brought in people onto the team that we've worked with in some capacity in the business, either on a contract or a project, and then ask them if they'd be interested in kind of taking on a bigger role. And that's worked out really well for us because of course, we understand if we work well together, we also understand their skill set and if they delivered or over delivered or what that project or contract looked like, and if we were happy with it. But then also, I think more so is just what's it like to work with this person in the business and kind of get a feel for that. So that's the way we've done it. Just being exposed to their work and then kind of moving forward from there has worked out, really well for us. We've been, John and I were both here in Toronto at the start, but he's since moved back to Australia. And our team was fully remote from that point on. So we are, quite distributed. We have team members in the US and Canada, Australia, and one digital nomad. So it varies where he is currently in, I think, European time zone, but, we never know where we're going to find Frank.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
So I think kind of to what I said, the communication and transparency is really critical. And, it doesn't mean you have to share every single number with every person, but sharing the metrics that are relevant to those people so that they understand how they're impacting them, what we're trying to do, and communicating that, clearly in a regular cadence, it starts to set the tone and it starts to, set a tone of wanting to win, wanting to, improve those types of things. I'm from a team culture athletics background. John is in the military. We're big on accountability, and we're big on, setting that tone of there's no reason why we can't be world class. Being world class is a mindset. It's, it's just what you bring to the table each and every day. And I think you have to model that, and that's where the culture, starts to grow from. So that's the spirit of what we do. That's the kind of the ethos and spirit of what we did in studio. And I think it's translated over to pipeline because we've kept, kind of going after very ambitious goals, and we communicate that to the team, and we're transparent in trying to move the needle and what's on the roadmap and why, and working together to get there. So I think that's where it starts.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Balance is a funny word. I like to think more of it as harmony than balance, which is that, balance is that things are equal, which they never are. So, I like to think of it as harmony, which is that sometimes some things are louder than others, but everything still has to work together. So, that's the way I've handled it, which is just that sometimes things are the priority, but it never tends to stay that way. And I think that's the key, and that's why it ends up being harmonious, is that there might be days where it's, I want to say an all-nighter, but you can be up late working on things. Now, especially now that we're in such different time zones, it's easy to, for me in North America, to be, on and connecting with John later at night. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's every day, or that, there aren't afternoons where I take some extra time, walking my dog out when it's really nice. So I think the key is that there has to be an acceptance of the harmony of things and the rhythm, and that there's always going to be seasons where, some things are louder than others and some things are quieter than others. But it's a matter of, I think, acknowledging that, understanding where you're at, and if it's not sustainable, then kind of making that shift. But it's really critical for me to continue to do things with family, with friends, enjoy, all the things that we're working so hard for all the time. So one example, I have a life goal of getting my mom to all of the tennis majors. Um, and the last one is Australia. We've gotten to 3 out of 4. We just did the French Open this year.
Right.
So,
Wow. Yeah.
It's a huge trip, and it's probably once in a lifetime. Hopefully get to go back. Absolutely loved it. But, if we're constantly just working, for work's sake, and not taking that time to enjoy, things that you never thought you'd get to do with friends and family, then I think it can be easy to get lost in that. So I always try and plan some big things, just as big as the goals are for pipeline. I have some pretty big, personal and family goals of things that I'd love to do, and I think it's just as important to, as big as those business goals are, to create those life goals and do your best to work towards both at the same time. But just understanding that, sometimes things are going to be a little bit louder than others, but that's kind of just the way life goes.
And how much professional development have you invested in yourself?
A lot, a lot. We were in SaaS Academy as a business for 3 years. So
Is
that's,
that Dan,
kind of,
is that Dan Martell?
yeah, Dan Martell. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So Dan and his team,
He's Canadian, isn't
he is Canadian. Yeah. 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 And so he's since stepped away from the day-to-day of SaaS Academy.
he?
But Dan is still my mindset coach. So I still connect with Dan in his program. So it's been big.
Sorry, you've obviously read his book, Buy Back Your Time, as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Got a signed copy here somewhere. It's a fantastic book, and it's amazing because it is the culmination of so many things from within SaaS Academy that are not specific to SaaS,
Yeah.
as you can see. And so being exposed to all of that and then seeing it come out, as this kind of concrete guide for any, entrepreneur, even person really, that wants to take control of their time was really something special. And Dan's the real deal. I really appreciate Dan and his work, and he's changed my mindset a ton over the last few years, and it's come down to consistently investing in that, from the business and then personally, and doing that work literally every week. It has been what we've been doing and what I've been doing for the last almost 4 years. So it's huge. I think it, it's what I was saying about growth and personal growth and business growth. I just, in my mind now, I can't separate them. So as much as I want this business to grow, at the end of the day, if it's really a vehicle for, personal development over the course of my lifetime, then that's, going to be a win no matter what happens with Pipeline. So happy to do those things.
Now, you mentioned you've got Dan as a coach, and you obviously had coaches in athletics, etc., as well, and sport. Have you had mentors along the way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, of course, from the business side, specifically with Pipeline and having been in SaaS Academy for those years, you're just surrounded by people doing incredible things with their businesses in all different industries. And, it's peer mentorship as well. It's learning from people that are, maybe just a couple steps ahead of you, but also maybe some that are leaps ahead of where you are, and understanding, what got them there, and having those conversations and figuring out where those next moves are, kind of for yourself. So we've had mentors along the way for sure. We've been in communities, we've been in groups. As I mentioned, we were, had an investment as well. So all those things have contributed over the years. There's always things where, you're going to get advice and either it works or it doesn't. Take it with where you're at, if it feels right or if it fits. Those are the types of things that you kind of have to consider yourself as you're going through things. But I'm definitely from the mindset that you need to seek out those conversations and try and understand what people have gone through, because the chances that what you're going through is completely uniquely different are unlikely. And that's kind of the lesson that I think you start to realize over time. But all that being said, not everything that someone suggests or, mentor or advisor is going to be the right thing for you to do at that exact point in time. But the idea is that we need to, keep that net wide so we can catch those ideas, and maybe they spur on something that is a bit of a better fit for the business at that time.
Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
We don't have a formal board of director or advisors. At this point, but maybe soon.
All right, Tess, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing is just that it's daily. A small business, any business operates, as much as we think it doesn't, even the biggest businesses in the world operate day to day, right? When AWS goes down and then subsequently 200 SaaS businesses go down, and nobody can access their, the software they're subscribed to, OpenAI goes down, like all of those things, we kind of assume that things are just going to operate as they do day to day. And that's the beauty of living in the 21st century. The expectation is that the things that work today are going to work tomorrow. And, I think when you're running a small business, you become acutely aware that that is only true if everything goes as planned. Whether you're running a fitness studio or a SaaS business or a cheesecake shop, or, if someone doesn't show up for their shift, maybe we have to close the store that day because they were the only person that was supposed to be there. If, there's a bug in the software, then, maybe someone has to pull an all-nighter and be there on the weekend. There's the types of things where, we kind of take for granted that everything's just going to work without work. So I think that that's probably the hardest thing. We kind of want the autopilot and just turn this thing on and let's get the passive income coming in and kind of do all that. But I think it's an illusion. I think the truth is that, the real core of what you're doing is always serving somebody, and staying close to that is critical, and that's not always easy, but it's what's necessary to make sure that your business is operating as best as possible, and that's day to day. There's no way around it when you're a small business owner, and like I said, the world could shut down.
Mm.
Who knows, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty, but that's the hard part for sure.
Favorite business book would just help you the most?
The last year or so, I read Dr. Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan's books, a few of those. So 10x is easier than 2x and Be Your Future Self Now. Those ones have really stuck with me. Maybe a little bit. I don't think it's a recency bias, to be honest. I think they genuinely, if I had even read them a couple of years ago, would be in my kind of favorites list. They're really great. And I think they're really great for business, but I think they're just really great books for anybody, to get clarity on what you want, and kind of how to get there. So those would be my favorites I can think of right now.
Have you read Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things?
I have.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of in your space in tech. My favorite part of that book was I was running around Christchurch in New Zealand at the time, literally running, jogging. And when I listened to it, and when Ben says, because there's very fast growing tech companies now part of Horowitz Anderson, the investment firm, but he said, if you've got to eat shit, don't nibble.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You just got to go all in there. I know. It's crazy. And I mean, reading that book and reading the things that he was going through, that's what I mean. Like, that's a great book on, I think, perspective.
Yeah.
Right. The hard things that he's dealing with are different level hard from an entrepreneurial standpoint. Like, you're talking about really some very, very big moments with big companies and the stress of that. And, putting that into perspective, I think matters, because when things are not going the way you want them to, it helps to understand that, kind of what I was saying, every business is in a day-to-day, kind of, I don't say battle, but it's daily, right? And when you read someone like Ben Horowitz and his experience growing the businesses that he did and what those big problems look like for him, and just knowing that someone survived that and survived it in a way that they were able to go on and do other big things, it helps, it matters. So
another good book on perspective in business, but also as part of the athletic world as well. Have you read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight?
So I started to read Shoe Dog and didn't. It's a big book, Shoe Dog.
13 hours.
Where I started to read it. Yeah, exactly.
13 hours.
Yeah, I got to go back for sure. But absolutely. I mean, the story of Nike is an incredible one as well.
He's quite humble in the book, I feel, and just what the business went through, the ups and downs. It's just phenomenal how many times the business nearly died.
That's exactly it. That's kind of exactly what I mean. There's stories of these behemoths that we think of today that, at several points in time might not have continued to exist beyond the, the moment that they were in.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Yeah, of course. One that I've been listening to more recently is the Startup CEO Show with Mark McLeod. So Mark is a Canadian. He's now a coach, coaches startup CEOs, but was in CFO, I think, and at a time was at Shopify, and is just very tapped into the Canadian ecosystem, but just broadly speaking, also brings in founders from kind of all over. So, yeah.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
The thing that comes to mind for me is actually weirdly Slack because of the communication. That's the first thing that comes to mind is, what's the tool we kind of can't live without? And that's the tool that connects our whole team around what we're doing and why. So, um, I think that's maybe a bit more of an abstract answer. I think there's going to be, of course, tools in any industry, um, sales tools and CRMs and all sorts of things. But for me, I think growth comes from, as we talked about, growth of the team and staying connected to the purpose and what we're doing. And so the tool that, kind of keeps us united in that, I think is the most critical one that we have, essentially.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 6 years ago?
Oh boy. What would I tell myself? I would just say that it's worth it.
Hmm.
That's what I would say. Say it's worth it. Just do it.
Thanks so much for your time today, Tess. We've really enjoyed our chat. Making wellness, health and fitness studios more efficient, not only in their bookings and other systems, but other parts of the business, as well as getting more from their data. Starting in 2019 into the shitstorm that was COVID. Started with 2 FTE, now around 6. You're global and growing, 300% growth in 2023, 150% last year. Congratulations to you, John, Mike, and the team.
Thanks, Troy.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.